All right, Chapter 4, Lesson 3, Multiply Fractions. So, it is still the snow day. Wow, snow days are fun, even when you make math videos all day. What will our village be? We had the chapel. We had the school. Now, the Pillsbury Doughboy Bake Shop, which I used to have a little Pillsbury Doughboy that went with it, but guess what? He broke. Sad. Oh, look in the window. What's that yummy food? Yay. Cool. Gotta love the Christmas village. Okay, back to work. Multiply fractions by fractions. Here we go. What does it mean? It's so tricky. Last time we multiplied whole numbers and fractions, and that kind of made sense. But multiplying fractions by fractions is a little trickier. So let's look at this little chameleon thing. It says, a chameleon's body is about a half the length of its tongue. A certain chameleon has a tongue that is 2/3 of a foot. So, how long is the body? Use an area model to show what half of 2/3 is. So, the tongue is 2/3 of a foot, and a body is half of 2/3. So, half of 2/3 is like saying 1/2 times 2/3. And it's really weird because in our last lesson, we said, oh, 2/3. Okay, 2/3 times 7. We could draw that out 7 times and see how many. No, 2/3 times a half. Like, you can't draw that out easily. So I'm going to try to show you in this little shaded area right here. If you have 2/3, go ahead and draw that. So this is 2/3. This is right here, 2/3. We only want half of 2/3. So we only want half of this. It's almost like chopping that in half. So if you think this right here is half. So this is the area that we're talking about. Half of 2/3. Now, half of 2/3, if you drew this over, it's kind of like sixths. See that right there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's kind of like 2/6. Oh, not 2/3, 2/6. And if you simplify that, it's 1/3. Now, let's go back to a fresh box. How many of you were thinking when we had 2/3, this is 2/3, that half of 2/3 would be this much? And that half, because this was 2/3, this is half of it, that would be 1/3. So half of 2/3 is 1/3. So it says, refer to the model. The section that was shaded represents a half by 2/3, which is, we said, 2/6. So I guess we kind of put our answer up here. Now, what is the relationship between the numerators and denominators of the factors and the numerator and denominator of the product? Well, let's look. We had 1/2 times 2/3. Those were our factors. And we said that that was 2/6. So what's the relationship here? Look at the numerators. 1, 2, 2. Isn't 1 times 2, 2? And what about 2, 3, and 6? 2 times 3 is 6. So basically what this is telling me here is we can use the same method where you multiply across and then simplify. So you multiply across the numerator, across the denominator, and simplify. So just like we did with multiplying a fraction by a whole number, we turned the whole number into a fraction and multiplied. We're going to do the same thing. So nothing too new in this lesson, just the fact that it's harder to conceptually visualize with bars. We kind of have to take that out and just use the equation. because now it's getting kind of hard to draw and think about in our head. So let's see what we have in store. On the first page, we have multiply fractions. And on the second page, we have simplify before multiplying. So essentially, we're going to have two methods here. One is what we've been doing. That's this. And what we've been doing here, let's write this. Method 1. This method is we simplify after multiplying across. That's what we did in the last lesson. We multiplied across and then we simplified. However, on this page, 275, we're going to do something that is like way easier, and all it is simplifying before you multiply. So method 2, simplify before multiplying across. And what you're going to see is this is the better option. The reason why this is the better option is because you get to simplify with smaller numbers, whereas over here, after you've multiplied, then you're simplifying with larger numbers, and it's just easier to simplify with smaller numbers. So we'll work this through and you'll be able to figure it out for yourself how method 2 is better if you can do it. Which everybody will be able to do it, but there are some problems that you just can't do it on. So for multiplying fractions, multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators, and then you simplify. So this is number 1. That's what we've been doing, multiply across. And number 2 is simplify. So in this picture here, 2/5 times 1/2, you have the fifths going this way, the halves going this way. So 2/5, half, and that gives us tenths, right? 2/10. 2 times 1 is 2. 5 times 2 is 10. And then you simplify to get 1/5. So using A, B, C, and D symbols, AB times CD, A times C, B times D. And B and D cannot be 0 because these are fractions. So let's try this method. It's going to have us use the model first. I like, just saying, I like when you have the model not with all the lines in it. So this is 1/3 times 1/4. So if you have the model like this is 1/3, and you want 1/4 of it. So you want 1/4 of the third. That's going to be that much, right? Now the reason why eventually you need to draw all the lines across is so you can see how much that is. So it's 3, 6, 9, it's twelfths, so it's 1/12. That's what that is right there. So, yeah, right here, 1/4 times 1/3 is 1/12. So that's one way to do this. You can still draw a diagram to check if you want to. But this equation's way simple. Multiply across. 1 times 1, 3 times 4. 1 times 1 is 1, 3 times 4 is 12. There's your 1/12, just like up here. Let's try some of these. 1/2 times 3/5. So what you can do is you can just multiply across. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 5 is 10. And there's nothing to simplify there. That's as simple as it gets. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Now you can simplify. If you divide by 3, you get 1/4. Multiply across. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 6 is 18. Now we have to simplify. So these can both divide by 2, right? 10 divided by 2, 18 divided by 2 is 5/9. So if you were still doing this grid, you have 1/2, and you want to divide it, so this is the 1/2, you want to divide it into 3/5. That's 3/5. Then you just keep drawing across. There are your tenths. So it's like you have 3/10. Or here, if you have 1/3 and 3/4, so you get 3/4 of a third. I like to use the word of. Then you can draw across here. All right, so that's where you get the 12ths from. So it's 3/12. Now, 2/3 of 5/6. So look at this. What if we did 5/6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you've got right here 5/6, and you want 2/3 of it. That right there. There are your 18ths. 3, 4, 5, 10 18ths. So you still could do the grid if you want to, but multiplying across is really easy, especially when we get into big numbers. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the awesome trick, because do you see how we had to simplify here? If we would have simplified before we multiplied, same with this, we had to simplify. If we simplify before we multiply, then it's easier. So watch the trick. If the numerators and the denominators have a common factor, you can simplify before you multiply. Remember that factors are 2 or more numbers that are multiplied together to form a product. So this is that greatest common factor thing. Now, again, the reason why this method's easier is because you're simplifying with smaller numbers if you simplify before you multiply. So in 2/3 times 5/6, which is the one that we did right down here, so our answer should be 5/9. What happens is and you need to look across this way and this way. So 2 and 6 both could be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So and by the way, 3 and 5, they don't go into, there's no common factor. So 1 times 5 gives us 5. 3 times 3 gives us 9. You don't have to simplify anymore. It's already simplified for you. So honestly, the only thing that makes this tricky is that you're going at a diagonal before you multiply across. That's the only thing I can think of that makes this a little bit tricky. Don't fear it. It's really, really good. Makes your life easier. So let's try it right here. 3/4 times 5/6. So if I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the diagonals. 4 and 5, there's nothing, like they can't divide into each other. I can't divide both of those by the same number. No greatest common factor. But 3 and 6 could both be divided by 3. So 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Let's see if that's what they have down here. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now multiply across. 1 times 5 is 5. 4 times 2 is 8. And there's no simplifying needed. I love it. This says when multiplying fractions, it's easier to find the answer if you simplify before multiplying. All right, now look at, what do we have to do to this whole number here in order to multiply? We need to turn this into an improper fraction, right? 18 is a fraction with a denominator of 1. So 4/9 times 18 looks like this. Now, look across. These can both be divided. Look at 18 can be divided by 9. So 9 divided by 9 is 1. 18 divided by 9 is 2. So now we have 4 times 2 and 1 times 1. Whenever you have a 1, there's nothing you can really do with that, by the way. So 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 1 is 1. So 8 over 1 is 8. 8 wholes. Cool. Let's try these then. So 4 and 4. those could both be divided by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now what about 3 and 9? Those could both be divided by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. So essentially, it's 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 is 3. When you multiply across 1/3, you don't have to do any simplifying. Now, if we didn't do the simplifying before, and we just multiplied across, 3 times 4 is 12. 4 times 9 is 36. See how you have to like think more? You're like, okay, what can I do? Can I divide by 2? Oh, I could, all right, I guess I could divide by 6 too. If I divide by 6, that's 2, 6. Oh man, I could divide even more. Oh, I guess 1/3. Okay, so see how it's just like, and if I would have done 12/36 and divided by 2, then I would have divided by 2 again. Oh, maybe I would have seen the 6 there and then had 1/3. So anyway, it's way easier to do this than it is to do all that scary simplifying stuff that always makes us roll our eyes. Okay, so 5 and 10. Look at this. They can both be divided by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 6 and 9 can both be divided by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. See? Already simplified. Okay, 3/5. We have to make that an improper fraction. So 3/5 times 10 over 1, 5 and 10. 5 divided by 5, 10 divided by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 1 times 1 is 1. So, answer is 6. I love this. I love this method. It makes it so much faster. Okay, next page, lawn mowing. Frank had half of the lawn left to mow. On Saturday, he mowed 2/3 of what was left. What fraction of the entire lawn did Frank mow on Saturday? Which, by the way, if you drew, this one would be an easy one to draw. He mowed half the lawn. Oh, he has half of it left. On Saturday, so this is half of it. On Saturday, he mowed 2/3 of that. So that's 6. It'd be like 2/6, which is like 1/3. Or, look at this. You can simplify those. 2 divided by 2, 2 divided by 2. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 3 is 3. So he mowed 1/3 of the lawn on Saturday. Let's move on to the guided practice. Okay, so this is going to go pretty quickly. We are going to do 1, 2, 4, 5, and 7. 1, 2, 4, 5, 7. Okay, so before we multiply across, is there any kind of simplifying? These are both 1, so there's nothing you can really do. 1 times 1 is 1. 8 times 2 is 16. There you have it. Now look, 3 and 4. You can't really, you can't simplify those. 2 and 5. You can't simplify those, so we just need to multiply across. 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 5 is 15. No simplifying needed. All right, now we need to turn this whole number into an improper fraction. So 3/4 times 12 over 1. Now, you can't do anything with this, but 4 and 12. 12 can divide by 4, which, by the way, I always try to see if they can divide by each other first. That's always the easiest, because that, if it is, that's the greatest common factor. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 1 times 1 is 1. So that's 9. All right, do this one. Look at both of these can be simplified. Can you simplify those? And then look and see how I did it. All right, so 3 divided by 3. These can both divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. These can both divide by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. Awesome. Now, do you see this one would have been a pain to draw out 3/10 of 5, 6. You would have had to draw out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 5, 6. But it's only 3/10 of it. So, gosh, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So then you'd have to draw all these little guys right in here. This is the part. See what I mean? That is a pain. It's easier to do this. Rick has half of a foot-long sub left from yesterday. He ate a third of the leftover sandwich as a snack. So here's the sub. He has half of it left over. He ate a third of this as a snack. So how much did he eat here? To me, that looks like a 1/6. Let's see if we can get it from multiplying across. Well, he ate 1/3 of the half. 1/3 of the half. 1/3 times the half. All right, 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. 1/6 of the sandwich. Independent practice. Okay, let's circle for independent practice 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. And listen, this one is not on your list. This is a really good challenge. You should try that if you're feeling confident. It's a fun one. Okay. Go ahead and do independent practice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus a little bonus. Have fun. All right, number 2 here, 3/4 times 5/8. Basically, you can't simplify, so you just multiply across. 3 times 5 is 15. 4 times 8 is 32. 4, we turn it into an improper fraction, and you can't simplify. So 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 goes into 8 twice with 2/3 left over. Number 4, we need to turn this into an improper fraction, and you can simplify. 15 and 6 can both be divided by 3. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 1 is 2. 25 divided by 2 is 12 with a remainder of 1, so 12 and 1/2 left over. If you did this one and you had 5, 6 times 15 over 1, and you didn't see this here, you may have multiplied across. So you would have gotten 75, 6. And then you may have simplified that by turning it into a mixed number and then having to simplify. That's okay too. This way is just easier. Number 6, we can simplify before we multiply. So divide these both by 4. These numbers both divided by 3. 1 times 1, 3 times 2. So Juanita spent 3/4 of her allowance at the mall. Half of that 3/4 was spent on earphones. So that would be 3/8. You may have done it out like this. 3 times 1, 4 times 2, 3/8. Now if you do this challenge, paint store has 35 gallons of paint in storage. 2/5 of those are for outdoor use. The others are for indoor use. Each gallon costs $22. What's the total cost of the indoor paint? The indoor paint. So that is the key here. And think about this. 2/5 of the 35 gallons are outdoor. That keyword of is something that you can use. So this is kind of like a two-step problem. Try it. All right, here is our reflection for Chapter 4, Lesson 3. I can multiply fractions. When multiplying fractions, I multiply the numerator of the first fraction by the blank of the second fraction. Then I multiply the denominator of the first fraction by the blank of the second fraction. Circle the correct equation. So circle the one that was done correctly. When multiplying fractions by fractions, you can either simplify before multiplying or after. If possible, it's easier to simplify blank, you multiply before or after. And circle the factors that can be simplified. So which one of these could be simplified? Circle them. In words, explain how to simplify 2/5 times 3/4 before multiplying. So what part of that could you simplify? Explain how. And then multiply and write the product in simplest form for these three. Show your work in the space below. And then go ahead when you're done and fill out this middle column for learning objective C.